struggling with something here. Very fatigued. So you have to excuse me if I'm a little fuzzy. One night this past year, I was having a hard time sleeping, so I was skipping across a barrage of channels, having to find something to catch for an hour or two until I got sleepy, and I stopped at this movie. And it was a B-rated movie, and I can't even remember exactly what the movie was, but it had an old man who was this fierce warrior who was on a quest. And kind of a familiar story, but for some reason, when this old man asked a question, it stuck with me. What is it that you see? Simple question, really, but yet it was really profound, even in the light of the fact that it was a B movie. But what is it that you seek? And more so, if I add my own words at the end of it, what is it that you seek really? Because we are all seekers, but like to pretend that we're seeking noble things, but that's not always the case. Here's the truth. Everyone seeks something. We are all by nature seeking people. We live among seekers. They're all around us. Some people seek money, others fame, some pleasure, others a sense of purpose, maybe something to validate themselves. Some seek love, others worldly power. We might seek a husband or a wife, or we might seek children, or a new job, or a better job, or a job that pays a better amount of money. New home, new friends, new church. The tragedy of our time is that so many of us are wasting our lives seeking after things that never really satisfy. We think they do. We think they will, but they don't. And then I think that leads us to seek for an escape. Some we seek relief from the things that we sought so hard for. We try to escape by numbing ourselves with highs and thrills and new searches and new things and new people. And now we conclude and we come to that B movie question again. What do we seek, really? One pastor, he said this. He said, here's a simple test to help you discover what you truly seek in life. The test is absolutely foolproof. You tell me how you spend your time and your money, and I'll tell you what you are seeking. You can say anything you like. You can come to the church and look very religious, but your time and your money don't lie. Show me your calendar and your checkbook, and I'll tell you the truth about your priorities. Interesting, and for a lot of us, that's kind of a bit scary. And for those that don't use a checkbook or a schedule book, don't think you're off the hook because you still have time. How do you spend your time? What is that time spent on? This week I read about a man who looked at his life and concluded that he was just like the professor on Gilligan's Island. Remember that? Some of you younger ones, you won't remember. The professor knew how to turn banana peels into diesel fuel. He could take algae and make chocolate fudge. But he never got around to fixing the hole in the boat so they could get off the island. He spent his whole life learning to do amazing things that really didn't matter, and he ignored the hole in the boat. And that's kind of sometimes what we do. We get stuck where we are. Ouch, you know? And maybe it doesn't describe us. Maybe it describes somebody else that we know. Here is what I've learned about a good portion of our seeking. Rarely is our seeking accurate, meaning that what we feel we're seeking for and what we really are seeking for is the same thing. It's kind of really the case because we disguise our seeking. We package it in different ways. And often we don't realize it ourselves. For instance, somebody wants love and to be loved. So they become promiscuous in their thinking, in their physical contact. That's going to fill that desire of love. Often in marketing, marketers ask the question, what is the felt need? Because that's what they want. They want to touch that so that they can pull you in, pull us in. So the question is really to us this morning again, what do you seek really? We're going to look at Luke 19 this morning. There's a guy named Zacchaeus. And you can remember the old Sunday school song. I'll bet as I read this, a lot of you can sing it with me. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for Jesus he wanted to see. And here's what the passage says in the NIV. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and wealthy. And he wanted to see who Jesus was. The NASB says that, and he sought to see who Jesus was. But being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. He wasn't the first person, nor is he going to be the last, to wish he could see Jesus. But the crowd was in the way. Interesting passage. The crowd was in the way. And I'm going to throw out some observations and some thoughts with this illustration. I won't tie them together right away, but I promise they will get tied together by the end. Was seeing Jesus difficult because Zacchaeus was a wee little man? So the song goes. It would be an interesting movie, wouldn't it? I could see Danny DeVito being Zacchaeus. A modern rendition of this story.
because he was too little. But I think the more important point is who was seeking who. Here's a guy who's had wealth. He had power. He had position. Yet we see him seeking Jesus. And obviously those things which he had previously sought and found didn't quite fill him up. He had what a lot of us would love. So here he was on this new quest to see Jesus. I love how the verse is phrased. He wanted to see who Jesus was. I find that extremely telling. Think about it. He already knew who Jesus was, right? He was a teacher from Galilee. He was that preacher guy. Everyone knew that. But here, we see him seeking Jesus to see who he was. Think about that. There's another sermon right there. He wanted to know who he was, not what he looked like. There's a kind of a dangling string you can chew on. The whole seeking part of the theme is repeated over and over and over and over again throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. Way too many times for me to even begin quoting verses, but here's a few. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. 2 Chronicles 7:14. The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there is any who understand, any who seek God. Psalm 14:2. The poor will seek and be glad. You who seek God, may your hearts live. Psalm 69:32. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13. And our passage this morning, Matthew 6:33-34. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I think it's pretty clear, don't you? Seeking God is pretty important. Let's break this down a bit. That verse passage, it says, seek first. Seek first. Not second. Not third. Not as an addition to, or as to fulfill a duty, or even also or along with. Very simply and specific, seek first. Interesting, he does not say seek for the kingdom, which is what Jesus would have said if he was addressing this command to unbelievers. He's speaking to those who are already kingdom citizens in this passage. Those who are what we call Christians. And he's telling them to make the interests of God's kingdom their priority. The previous verses were really talking about those things that we choose to seek after. He is basically telling believers here that you seek after them, you will be in all kinds of pains, and all kinds of hurts, all kinds of anxieties and stresses. And it's clear that these other things, they might look really, really good, but they're secondary. I don't hear Jesus saying not to think about these things, because we have to. He doesn't tell us it's wrong to consider them. But he says, just don't seek them. And he says, seek me first. Seek my kingdom first. Dwell on it. He's not saying don't be concerned about other things, just don't make them number one. No life is complete that doesn't feel some compulsion, some desire that's driving it. If somebody doesn't have that desire, a desire or a compulsion, they're just miserable. The word seek demands an intensity, a perseverance, a zeal to achieve the desired objective. It's not a passive word. It is an action word that implies intentionality. So he tells us what to seek. And he says, seek his kingdom. The things that exist in his kingdom, those things are forever. There's the difference. Words like grace and forgiveness and mercy and faith and hope and joy are to be sought, they're to be embraced, they're to be shared, they're to be celebrated, but they are words of forever. There are some of the kingdom things that will last forever. Listen, sin won't last forever. God will, his kingdom. Hurt won't last forever. Pain won't. Tears won't. They're not of the kingdom. Neither will revenge or vengeance or winning and losing, failure or fear. They won't be in the kingdom. Now stop and think how much of our time and energy we spend thinking about those things that really don't matter much in the long run. How many of us nurse our hurts and the wrongs done against us, the failures that we've had, the losses that we've suffered, and the pains that we have? How much of our life do we allow to be dominated by these thoughts? So no wonder many of us are depressed. So God tells us here to seek his kingdom because it will last forever. It doesn't take rocket science to figure out that we're going to be in forever a whole lot longer than the 100 years we may have here.
Thank God. Amen.
Exactly. And it says, seek his righteousness. Righteousness comes from a Greek word, diagon. I can't even pronounce it. But it's being proper or right in the sense of being fully justified or being in accordance with what God requires. It's a quality of being upright. It conveys the idea of conforming to a standard or a norm. The righteousness of God, the right of God. It could be stated as all that God is. It's all He commands, all He demands, all He approves, all that He provides through faith in Christ. His righteousness is all He is. It's His character. So when we're told to seek His righteousness, we're being told simply to seek Him. Not a knowledge of Him. That's where we get it wrong so often. Not a knowledge of Him, but Him. Him. Seek Him. A relationship with Him. And there's a loose end tied. We are to seek who He was and is through a relationship. It's all about Jesus. You know, I'm a driving instructor, and I tell my students every day, when you get into the car, your driving test, and to take your driving test, you want to give those examiners no reason to look at your driving any closer than you want them to. So, exaggerate your looking. So, when you look right and left, let there be no doubt that you're looking right and left. And then they're not going to look any closer. Because if you give them reason to look closer, they will find something wrong. And I think that's true in a whole lot of areas in our lives. Because what we seek, we find. And that's true in every area and realm in life. Unless we seek, we will not find. And what we seek for, good or bad, we eventually find. Those instructors, when they start to look with a fine tooth, they're going to see imperfections. One of my students mentioned that he was seeing a lot of Ford Mustangs on the road lately. And the funny thing was, as that stuck in my mind, suddenly I started to see Ford Mustangs all over the place. Were they there? I don't know. Probably not, but just now I was looking for them. And I don't know, but probably if we take these principles into our relationships all the time too, they work the same way. And what do I mean by that? You start to look at the imperfections in your significant other. What are you going to see? Imperfections. But if you're looking for the good, you're going to start seeing the good. Just like the bad, it's going to become illuminated. It's going to overshadow the bad. But it's what you're seeking. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to be blind to the bad. Just that your seeking heart is able to overlook it because it's not your quest. Too often we don't see God because we're not He's not what we're seeking. And so often we miss so much of him. So we need to start out, we need to watch out, we need to begin to see him everywhere. We need to seek him. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And then it says, and all these things will be added to you. All these other things that cause us anxiety and worry, all our tomorrows and todays and needs and desires and dreams, and even those things we call spiritual, like Bible study and prayer and worship, they are all added to us when we seek him first. All the other things like purpose, joy, and companionship, and love, and contentment, and hopes, and needs are met by him. Desires filled. And he says, and it will be all added to you. He isn't clear on exactly what all that means, just that they're going to be all added. I love what C.S. Lewis once said. He said, love God with all your heart, then do as you please. And when we seek him with all our hearts, he gives us all the desires of our hearts. And that's what the psalmist says. He will change our hearts so that our heart starts to desire what his heart desires. Because of that truth, we need to learn to trust the other things to the Father. Those things that are second and third. We need to trust them to him. So after your work is over, after your planning is done, after you have sown and reaped and gathered, leave the rest to God. And if you don't think by your calculation that you're doing and reaping and gathering isn't enough, then just stop and think. I don't need to worry about that, because my Father does. So I'm going to trust him, I'm going to lean on him, I'm going to acknowledge him, his ways, his character, because my Father knows he becomes our blank check for necessities. These things shall be added unto you. And God will always keep his word to the letter. Actually, he will usually go beyond what the letter seems to mean. Solomon was told to ask God for anything. And he asked God for wisdom. And it says, and the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him. And then while he gave Solomon wisdom, he also added to him riches and 1,000 other things which did not appear in the agreement. These things will be added unto you. It's God who makes promises. These infinite blessings will throw in everyday things as if they were small account to us. We just have to trust him. You know, it might not be more than we want, but it will be enough. Tomorrow may mean a tough task, a disagreeable duty, a costly sacrifice. It may be for somebody who, we have to do something for somebody that's not very worthy of it. Life is full of testings of our willingness to follow Jesus. But Matthew 6:33 tells us to seek God first, and the rest of these things will follow in due course. And as for all these things, he's going to give them and he's going to seek them down. They will be thrown. I don't even know what I just read there. Sorry. Basically, God's going to give it to us. He's going to give us what we need. So what is it that we seek this year, really? And that's the first question we need to answer before we can talk about how we go on from there. He made it clear to us, whoever seeks him will find him. And that he will unload his blessings on it. And he paid the price, and he showed us that. And we celebrated it every week.